Hello, I am Yogini Sunita, and this is Meditation, Yoga, and Stuff podcast. I believe my dharma or my life's purpose is to share my understanding of meditation, yoga, and Ayurveda, holistic healing science of India. I make these amazing wisdoms accessible and adaptable for present times. So let's start. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time and you joining me here today. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about something called Samskara. Now again, like a lot of Sanskrit words, there is no direct translation of this word, but it can be mental impressions with our experiences. So when we experience something, it creates a mental impression in our system, and this is called Samskara in Sanskrit. Now, why this is important, why I'm talking about this Samskara? The Sanskar is very important because that kind of like creates our personality, that kind of like creates how we see the world. Let me give an example. The science tells us that even the colors we are seeing are different. Every human being sees the color differently. So the red or green or blue, which you see, may be different for you as compared to it may be different for other people. So this is the fun of how our creation of our mind, basically. Our mind is such a powerful tool we have. And what happens that when we experience something, it keeps this, mind keeps this in our memory bank. And sometimes these sanskaras or these impressions which are kept in our mind are basically maybe created by the mind. It is not exactly what has happened, but maybe what we remember, like what mind thinks we need to store. Now, mind has to be, there is so many things constantly happening. We see so many things in each and every moment. Now, mind can't store everything, and it needs to make sense of that. So maybe 5 to 10% of what we see is stored in our system. And out of that, mind also gives its own interpretation to these things. Say, for example, as a child, if something happened and you remember that in certain way, and you think that maybe, say, for example, color red, if you, for example, you fell down and it was because of something, you bumped into something color red. And then from there, mind may interpret it as color red is not good for me. These are the things, and we take that information into our adult life as well. And it is not just from the childhood, it is these mental impressions are constantly happening. And we take this information and we remember it in certain way, which may not be true. The reality which we think what is real around us may not be the reality, the true reality. It is maybe the impression created by mind. So we are looking at from now that veils which are created by these impressions, and we are remembering or experiencing world from these veils of sanskaras. And what happens when we become aware of these veils? A lot of time, most of the time, we are not aware of that. It needs a conscious practices and consciously tuning inwards to become aware of these sanskaras. And when we become aware of these veils or sanskaras, awareness is the key. Like 50% we almost winning that battle. And then when we consciously remove these veils, we start to see what is real. So that's why yoga philosophy talks about the reality is different than the sanskaras. So sanskaras, we store these impressions in our mind, and sometimes we react even before we know the reaction time is so fast because of the impressions we have kept in our mind, these sanskaras, that we react before we know. So sometimes when we start noticing this and when we start our reactions, the awareness helps us to move away from these reactions. And that is also really beneficial for our system. So some reactions can be very negative, and we need to change these habits. So to do that, awareness is the key. How can we bring awareness into our life? Awareness then can come from correct yoga practices like movement practices, asana practices, breathing practices, correct meditation practices. Also, positive habits is also very important. Now, let's see how these physical movements are going to help us. For example, so our body is a slow mind. So whatever is happening in our body, we store. Whatever is happening in our mind, we store it in our body. Now, when the body is slow mind, when we are storing this information physically in our system, we're going to look at it from different point of view. Then that means whatever we store in our body will also have, when we move our body, it is going to affect our mind positively or negatively, depending on how we move our body or what we do with our body. So if we do the correct asana practices for our system, or correct practices, physical movement, nature walk, conscious awareness into the body, all these things are going to create a positive effect. And we may start noticing, oh, I'll hold my shoulders when I'm doing these practices. And then it may come from there into your daily life. So it really helps to kind of like work this way. We will start working with our body because it's tangible. We can sense it, we can move it, so we can connect with our body better. So that helps. And slowly and steadily, when we start doing that, it helps the body, but also our breathing pattern. Because you will notice that when we are stressed, our breathing pattern is completely different than when we are relaxed. So tuning into our breath is very powerful. And that's why the yogic breathing practices are amazing. Now, word of caution with yogic breathing practices: if they are not done correctly, they have side effects. So please find a yoga teacher who can teach you these practices correctly. We can't take these practices lightly. They are very profound practices and they have side effect. And these breathing practices work with our psyche. So be very careful and be very gentle when you do these practices. And then moving from the breathing practices towards meditation practices help us to undo these coloring of sanskaras. When we start tuning in and when we start noticing, I react like this, instead of beating yourself about it, conscious awareness and observing, becoming observer, helps us to let go of these mental patterns, and it helps us to come back into ourself better. Because a lot of time these sanskaras may not be something which are you may have inherited it from the family, from the society, and we start thinking that these are our thought patterns, but that may not be true. Your thought pattern may be different than maybe your parents' thought pattern. But what happens with the sanskaras, that we react it's so fast, the reaction time is so fast that we already reacted about this particular maybe issue. And so we don't give ourselves enough time to, to come out of that sanskara pattern. But when we become aware and with right practices, and that's why yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda is so powerful and so helpful. it very gently start helping us to undo this pattern. And then our true self comes forward. Our true thoughts, our true reactions will start showing up. And a lot of time when we carry these reaction for such a long time, it is very tiring, because this is something which is not yours. You are imitating someone else, maybe your parent or the society around you. And this is where some, maybe these habits have helped you, or sanskaras have helped you before, but it is time to let it go. So when your system is telling you in any way or form to let go these practices, these sanskaras, then it is a time to bring in conscious practices. And these conscious practices will help you to become aware and let go. Now, sometimes we need outside help to bring these practices in our life. So this is where traditionally guru or was very important. But nowadays it's very tricky to find a right person. So maybe you can start, in some part of your life, you maybe have a health coach, you can work with them, a life coach, you can work with them, and slowly and steadily unravel this mystery of sanskaras and let go the negative sanskaras. I hope this helps, and I hope you continue your journey of discovering your true self. Thank you for joining me today. If you like what I'm sharing, please support me. There is a link I will be posting with this podcast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate that you're taking this time out of your day. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye for now.